Dr.
Hello.
Kreeft. I'm just so happy to be here.
I'm happy that you're happy.
I'm so happy to be here. Man, where do I even start? I'll start with this book, Symbol or Substance. So when did you write this book?
When or why?
When?
About 10 years ago, I
10
think.
years ago. I guess then a good follow-up question is why?
Because I see the issue as very central. If the Catholic view of the Eucharist is not true, it's very untrue. We're worshiping wine and bowing down to bread, thinking it's Almighty God,
Right.
which is the stupidest idolatry ever. And if it is true, then receiving the Eucharist in Holy Communion is the most perfect union with God possible in this life. And it's our greatest privilege. And the angels must be green with envy because they can't do that. So that, during the time of the Reformation, was the issue that generated the most heat and the most hate and the most division, even more than justification by faith or sola scriptura. And these three gentlemen represent three positions on that spectrum. Tolkien is a full Roman Catholic. Lewis, who believed in the real presence, was not a Catholic, but a Protestant, Church of England. And Billy Graham, who was a Baptist, believed that the Eucharist was just a sacred symbol, a very Protestant. And I admired all three of them. None of them are basically wrong about the meaning of life in Christianity. So I tried to have a trialogue in which they wouldn't simply divide and they wouldn't simply unite, but just be themselves.
Right.
And since I know Lewis and Tolkien pretty well, I think I got them pretty down
You
well.
did. It felt like I was reading
didn't
Lewis.
know Billy Graham that well. And I was very pleased to get letters from a number of Baptists and Billy Graham people to say, you're very fair to Billy Graham. That's what he would say. So I think the book works.
The book was phenomenal. There was moments in the beginning where you said, I just want to be a fly on the wall, if I could be a fly on the wall. And I think you did such a fantastic job. And you honored each man so well.
Yeah.
I left not feeling the argument for transubstantiation to be so pressed on to me, but rather offered in such a cordial and beautiful way. And it was creepy. It was creepy. Because how well you were good with Lewis.
All three guys I imitate in this way.
Right.
It's going to take a minute to formulate a thought, but I just got an unusual methodological thought. I don't usually much think about methods. There's three ways to present the Christian faith. One is in safe and sometimes even profound but impersonal terms. Here are the values, here are the laws, here are the reasons and whatnot. And there's a place for that. Okay. The other is in very personal and confessional terms. This is what it's done for me. It has changed my life. And then there's something in the middle where you have that concrete toughness of personal confession, but you also have the belief in objective eternal truths that you have in the more scholarly and theological half. And I think all three of these guys mediated those two very well, which is why I admire them, and I try to do the same thing. And I recognize the value of impersonal theology, of course, and I recognize the value of concrete personal confession, of course, but I don't do either of them. I do something in the middle. I talk to people as simply and concretely as I can about these profoundest things.
If you could speak to only one of them about the Eucharist, who would it be?
Tolkien. He knew it the best.
What questions would you ask?
What were your feelings what did your son Christopher reply to your letter about the Eucharist? Tolkien confessed that he was very depressed most of his life. He was a curmudgeon. And Christopher was about to get married or just getting married. And Tolkien wrote a beautiful letter about the Eucharist as heroism. maybe I should have asked to speak to Christopher, his son, who received the letter, rather than just his father. But it's a very beautiful letter. In this world, the one thing we have absolute reliance on is Christ in the Eucharist. That's God Almighty in the flesh still.
Now, Tolkien is famous, of course, for Aragorn, and he's famous for Frodo and Samwise Gamgee, and even Fingolfin and men and elves in the Silmarillion, writing some of the best moral and upstanding characters, I believe, in fantasy.
Heroes. We have so few heroes.
So few heroes. What do you think he meant by the Eucharist being heroic, partaking in the Eucharist being heroic?
What the church means by it. It's a high and holy opportunity. It's going way above our head. It's like a little kid mounting a stallion and being allowed to ride.
In Gen Z right now, specifically online, the Eucharist is such a heated topic. It's such a heavy debate. You know, what is it? You can even say, like, where is it? What would you give, a piece of advice? What piece of advice would you give to the younger generation when approaching this holy and sacred meal? And I don't just mean just a Catholic perspective, but so many Protestants and so many people who don't fully understand it, like me, are trying to approach something so vast. This is kind of a messy question, but even in my approach to the Eucharist, I have found such a deep history in the arguments, in the metaphysics, in the theology, in the emotion that it holds for so many people. It's almost daunting to tackle. And I have found, after like a year and a half of reading, barely, I feel, on it, I am left with, could we ever possibly know?
I love to make, or try to make, complex things simple.
Yes.
And this is a great and complex mystery. And when people ask me how I can come to know the truth about this, maybe they're Catholics who have lost some or all of their faith in the Eucharist. Maybe they're Protestants who are not absolutely certain that they're right and wonder whether Catholics might be right. Maybe they're agnostics who are in the middle. I say the same thing to all of them. Start this way. Find a Catholic church in the middle of the day that has few or no people in it, so that when you go there, you're not observed and you don't feel that you're in a crowd. Plunk yourself down in front of the tabernacle and pray to the God that you believe in. Is that you? Are you there? If you're there, if Catholics are right about this, bring me there, because I want you above all things. And if you're not there, please don't bring me there, because that's idolatry and that's a wrong path. But I absolutely want to do your will, and I want to know your will for me. So whatever it is, I am open to. Please lead me in your time and in your way. Do you dare to do that? And some of them, I haven't gotten too many responses, but a few of them said, well, maybe I'll do that someday. And some of them actually did it. And some of them got back to me and said, that was the turning point in my life.
Wow.
I did it, I meant it, and I got an answer.
Wow. Well, good.
They didn't all become Catholics.
Right.
But some did.
Right. Now, I know that Tolkien actually wrote a couple times about the Eucharist to his sons. And he spoke to, I believe, his younger son, his name is passing me, not Christopher, but I totally forget his name. But he said, take it every single day. The question then I would have is why? Why partake in it so much?
Because it's Christ himself. You can't have too much of Christ.
You can't have too much of Christ. It's fantastic.
If you notice that you're taking it for granted and that your piety is slipping as you do it daily, it might be good to fast for a little bit, even from the Eucharist. But taking it every day is like eating food every day. It's the normal thing.
Now, Tolkien had this unique ability to take the mundane and make it wonderful.
Yes.
I've heard it described as disfamiliarization. And even G.K. Chesterton did this with The Man Who Is Thursday. They take, and Lewis, they all do it. They take the mundane.
Yep.
They don't rip it apart, but they make it magical. They make swords glow, like you have Sting here. How do we go about our day, our Christian life, and partake in such a holy thing and allow it not to become mundane.
Very simple. See that this is an instrument in God's hands, that God is directly controlling every single subatomic particle in the universe, that this ugly and threatening technological marvel called a microphone is now being held by God in front of my face, and he is expecting me to speak certain words into it. It's not just a thing.
Right.
It's an instrument. Everything is an instrument of God. All things work together for good to those who love God. All things, even bad things, even threatening things. See the man who's painting the picture. It's a weird-looking picture, and there's dark parts of it. Don't just look at the picture. Look at the painter, and that's God.
So good. This is a dream come true for me, by the way. I love your answers. This is so good. Okay, here we are again with Tolkien, the philosophy of Tolkien. And this book threw me on a track of looking at Lord of the Rings in a deeper and more fantastic way. You pick apart not his narrative, but his approach, his method to writing the Lord of the Rings. And you said something profound on page 84. Fantasy is a flight to reality. Now, my question would be this. What do you mean fantasy is a flight to reality?
Walter Hooper, who was Lewis's, took care of Lewis's estate after his death, wrote that Lewis was so successful in his fantasy because he realized that most of us, when we approach Christ in the Gospels, have the problem of familiarity. We've read this many times before, so we're not expecting to be shocked. And we also have another watchful dragon which keeps us from being exposed as we're supposed to, and that's duty. This is what I ought to do. All right, I'll do it out of duty. And duty doesn't usually surprise you or give you great joy, although it's very important. When you take the gospel and you translate its truth into not the literal historical events that happened in this world, but into another world that you have invented. When you don't necessarily write about Christianity, but you cast a Christian light, not in a vague sense, but in a very concrete sense, on the events in Middle-earth or Narnia, you creep past those watchful dragons. So that Lewis received many letters from children who said, I'm in love with Aslan, and I should be in love with Jesus. Is that bad? And Lewis had to say, no, Aslan is Jesus, as he might have been in another land. But you don't expect him to be a lion. The Jews didn't expect him to be a man. They expected him to be simply God. So the shock that Jesus gives you in this world is hard to get. And fantasy is a way of inculcating that shock, a way of exposing you to that shock. So it's fantasy only in the details. It's not fantasy in the truth of the story. It's not an allegory. It's not a one-to-one relationship like Pilgrim's Progress, but it is an image, a different kind of image. So the fact that you're in a fantasy world opens you up to anything. If you're in this world, you're not open to anything. You know the laws of science and whatnot. But in another world, you're more open. And if Jesus in disguise can be presented in another world, he can get at you more deeply. And in the Lord of the Rings, we have Jesus figures. Frodo, Aragorn, and Gandalf all in some way give up their lives to save Middle-earth, which is what Jesus does. And we fall in love with them, and thus we fall in love with Jesus, although not literally one-to-one.
Now, you've said Aslan and Dostoevsky, basically C.S. Lewis and Dostoevsky have portrayed Jesus the best in their work. Of course, we've talked about Aslan and how even young children were writing to Lewis. I read those letters saying, am I allowed to love this lion? And this is where Lewis writes back and says, Aslan is a supposal, and you just spoke pretty greatly on that. Can you go and talk about Dostoevsky's approach to who Christ was?
That's a fantasy too.
Yes.
Jesus didn't come back during the Medici popes. And because it's a fantasy, Dostoevsky, like Lewis, opens your heart to looking at it without those watchful dragons of duty and familiarity. You don't know what's going to happen next, and he surprises you. Okay. If he had been more allegorical, it wouldn't have worked. If he quoted his own words in Scripture, it wouldn't work. Mm-hmm. There's the duty and the familiarity coming back again. Mm-hmm. So Aslan has a totally different world and a totally different situation than Jesus did. Mm-hmm. But he's still obviously Jesus in Narnia. And when Jesus came 2,000 years ago, he had a people and disciples and enemies, and he tailored his words to their needs. And now, if he were to come back 1,500 years later, at the time of the Spanish Inquisition, he'd have a very different situation. And Dostoevsky imagines, through his would-be atheistic character, Ivan, what he might have said if he had a conversation with the author of the Inquisition. And he put into the mouth of the Grand Inquisitor brilliant words. The Inquisitor is not simply a nasty totalitarian dictator. Mm-hmm. The Inquisitor's argument is stunning. Jesus, you love people, and if you love people, you want to make them happy. And your church doesn't make people happy. Its ideals are too high. People can't attain them. And they don't like suffering. They like ease. Well, we take those high ideals and those calls to a higher life off their back. They come saying, please relieve us of our freedom of conscience. Our conscience tells us that we should be heroes. And that's uncomfortable. Make us comfortable. Do our thinking for us. Do our acting for us. Tell us exactly what to do and what not to do, so we can just lie back and be happy. And the Inquisitor says, I've done that. I know it's not the truth. I know it's not your teaching. But they don't want your teaching. It's too hard. So I give them my version of it, and they're happy, and they're thankful to me. So if love makes people happy, I'm more Christian than you are, because they love me, but they don't love you. Only a few of them love you. And that was true in his day, too. The other trick or method that he uses is he doesn't allow Jesus to speak at all in the Grand Inquisitor. The Grand Inquisitor does all the speaking. And you understand Jesus through contrast with what the Inquisitor says. You have to imagine what the right answer to these persuasive arguments might be. And you're wrong, no matter what your answer is, because Jesus doesn't give any answer at all. He gives silence. But he also gives one action. He kisses the Grand Inquisitor. That's what he did to us. We're a bunch of frogs in a frog pond, making loud noises and demands. And God comes down, and what does he do? He kisses a frog and turns it into a prince. But he didn't turn the Inquisitor into a prince. The most shocking thing in that story of the Grand Inquisitor is after Jesus kisses him, the Inquisitor shudders with fear and says, go away. He had just captured him. He had spent his life trying to capture him. He longed to crucify him again. And this is his opportunity. And he could have done it. And he lets him go free. Why? He can't stand the presence of Jesus. The Inquisitor is in hell. God is in hell. God is everywhere. God is truth and God is love. And those in hell have rejected truth and love and hate truth and love. And they're tortured by truth and love. And God can't turn those things off. So that's a terrifying short story. It's a kind of a psychology of damnation. with apparently the nicest of motives. The Inquisitor wants people to be happy. The Inquisitor is rejecting Christ, rejecting the truth, and rejecting Christ's love. Mm-hmm. And that's the road to hell.
N.T. Wright, he describes hell as the undoing of the image.
Yeah.
And here, one of the most impactful parts of the philosophy of Tolkien, you say this: "This dark path began in Eden. Once we laid the hands on the fruit we desired, the horrible effect took place immediately. It laid its hands on us. The self was unselfed, not filled but emptied, not enhanced but devastated. The object grew into a god, and we shrank into slaves. Mm-hmm. We exchanged places. We became the objects, the its, and it became the subject, the I. We found our identity in what was less than ourselves, mm-hmm. and what we could possess. Mm-hmm. We were possessed by our possession, mm-hmm. or by our possessiveness. We who began as the Adam, man, became the golem, the unman." How do you see the unman, the undoing of the image of God, play out most?
In two ways, in Gollum's way and in Sauron's way. In Gollum's way, in the little people who just want fun, games, Facebook, images. In Sauron's way, in maybe not only, but certainly an example of it is the experts in Silicon Valley, the transhumanists, who are trying to divinize us by giving us artificial immortality by either genetic engineering or transferring our minds into computers. That's Sauron's way, because Sauron put all of his power into that ring. And it's the most powerful thing in Middle-earth. No one can stand up to the ring. Whoever's got the ring is going to conquer. So Sauron's apparently infallible. Not really. Sauron is in need of the ring. The ring is his super powerful slave. And the famous master-slave relationship is that the master is really the slave of the slave, because he's addicted to his need for the slave. Well, we don't have flesh and blood slaves anymore, thank God, but we do have slaves made of cyberspace and silicone and also made of money. Whatever you worship, whatever you can't get, what you can't be detached from, what you can't live without having, that's your God.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying so far. I want you to know that this conversation has been made possible because of Theos U. Theos U is a library of theological content. It's remarkable. Dr. Peter Kreeft is actually on Theos U. He has a remarkable philosophy course. I highly suggest that you take it. Not only that, if you're interested in theology at all, and if you follow me, you probably are, this is a great place to start. It's accredited. It's remarkable. The link is in my description. If you use code theology, all caps, you'll get 15% off. Again, if this is something that you're interested in, theology, learning more about our faith, make sure to click the link in the description.
So sometimes it's a simply boring and comfortable ring, and sometimes it's a ring of power and ambition. But the ring is something that is exactly like the idols in the Old Testament. It's a God that you make. And then you are made in its image. It has ears, but it hears not. It has eyes, but it sees not. It has a brain, but it thinks not. So you lose your identity into your idol.
I put this phone on the table. It's almost like an all-seeing eye.
I asked my students to write essays on how their world was different when they decided not to look at a screen for 24 hours. Most of them say, I can't do it. Some of them tried to do it and found out that they couldn't. And those who could always learned something. And the one thing common to all the learning is I didn't realize how addicted I was to my phone. I didn't realize how incredibly difficult this would be. That's the most massive addiction I know. It may not be as immediately destructive as drugs, but it's more widespread. Most of our kids are addicts already to their phones and to the forces and people that are capturing them, deliberately capturing them through the phones.
I do social media for a living. My whole job is to get views, right? That's what the lie is. There's a little K mark, 10K likes, 10K followers. And I have found myself, even this past week,
Be a spy.
you're upset by not having the K by a post. And it's scary how much this can control you and someone.
Well, you have a high vocation. Be a spy. Apparently work for the enemy and disable the enemy.
Be a spy. That's what you said. Be a spy. A pastor, he recently gave me the advice. He said, David, drop in and get out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because it feels...
Well, it's like a preacher going to a whorehouse. Preach, but don't stay there.
It's true. What would you tell me as someone who wrestles daily with this? I have apps in place. I'm actually developing my own app because I just need it to be so intense. I need to shut down everything on this.
Pray your will be done. Pray that you're doing his will in that field, and be totally open to where he leads you. Ask him to lead you. The trick for discernment, how do you discern what is God's will for my life? The most important thing is not to figure it out, is not to have a brilliant intellect. The most important thing is to have a humble will. God, whatever you say, I'll do. I am open to you. In John's Gospel, the Pharisees were on Jesus' back. They said, how can we possibly understand your teaching? And how can we know whether it really comes from the person you call your Father, God? How can we believe that? 2 questions, and he answered both. He said, if your will were to do the will of my Father, you would understand my teaching. The key to discerning God's will is your will. I would suggest in preparation for and in putting on a kind of suit of armor for a trip into cyberspace, meditation, silent, honest meditation. Because then you can at least be open to God's will. Even if he doesn't respond and give you a definite leading, he will do it. God works in the unconscious better than in the conscious. Once in a while we actually hear words from him, but most of the time we don't. But as long as we're open to him, as long as we seek him, we find him. That's a promise. A divine, infallible promise. All who seek find. So your vocation is to seek to be a good spy in this area, which needs to be liberated and clarified. And you don't know exactly what to do, and God does. So just over and over again, your will be done, not mine.
Sometimes it can feel impossible. I feel like Sam and Frodo when they're going through Mordor. But conversations like this is like the star that Mordor can't touch.
Well, faith is possible only in a world where it seems impossible. And hope is possible only when it seems hopeless. I don't hope that my hand is going to raise, I know that. But I hope that something wonderful will come from this ordinary conversation. I don't know that.
I love it. Now, can we shift the conversation towards beauty?
Yes.
This book here, C.S. Lewis as a Philosopher, Truth, Goodness, and Beauty. It's a compilation of many different authors. You are in the first chapter, and you speak to beauty. I recently took a trip to Japan.
A beautiful country.
Yes. And I was heavenly. I was heavily inspired by you. And I brought my professor into the trip. It was just with my friend Elijah and a couple others. We were going for fun, but it soon turned into research because of you. Because in this section of this monster of a book, beautiful, but a monster, so hard, so much. All this being said, I digress. But in it, you mentioned Japan, and it was just a quick sentence. And I've been wanting to ask you this question because you said Japan is an island surrounded by water, and there's something with water and beauty, and cultures that are surrounded by water are pulled into beauty. What did you mean by that? Because there's nothing else. in the sentence, and I was like, this is so interesting.
Well, the English know this sea love very well. A lot of their poets have it. And the sea has a mysterious power over us. It calms us. We find it beautiful. Those who have no aesthetic sense say, I don't get it. You can't live in the sea. You're not a fish. And it's just so many quadrillion tons of cold salt water inhabited by potential food. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It's a beautiful, pure, clear image of God. It's one of his icons in this world. It's the biggest thing you ever see. And it's got a clear surface and deep depths. And to be in it is to be in another world and to lose a lot of the bad things on land. And since it's so beautiful, countries like Japan and England are very beautiful countries, Ireland too. And maybe that has something to do with the fact that it's very difficult for the faith to thrive in those countries because they're so beautiful. You're so happy in this world that you don't long for the next.
When I was in Japan, I could feel that.
Yep.
There's no need for God, for religion. They have Buddhism, but it's not practiced.
But it's not a felt need as much as it is in, well, probably the most lively place in the world now for the growth of the gospel is sub-Saharan Africa. It's a terrible place. Grinding poverty, political corruption, Muslim terrorism. They smile more than anybody else in the world. Christianity is growing there faster than anywhere else in the world. More miracles and visions there than anywhere else in the world. The gospel always goes down to the bottom. It's humble.
My pastor, he says this, water flows to the lowest place.
Yep.
And I've tried to live by that.
Yeah.
Lewis, he says this about creation, and this is interesting. He says, any patch of sunlight in a wood will show you something about the sun which you could never get from reading books on astronomy.
Yep.
These are pure and spontaneous pleasures. These are patches of God light in the woods of our experience. When I was in beauty, I mean, that's true. When I was in Kyoto, I was in a moss garden, and I was baffled by the sunlight piercing the trees, hitting the moss. The garden, of course, was stewarded remarkably well. Everything was perfect. But in that beauty that I'm experiencing, I find God, yet the gardener, more than likely, isn't. But you said they're surrounded by beauty. How does beauty then lead me to God? Does that make sense? Am I asking?
Yes, yes. In a strange and unpredictable way. For instance, what would you say is the most beautiful thing in this room? I have all sorts of things.
I think we are.
Okay. What other than us is the most beautiful thing in this room?
Of course. I think the icon of Jesus is pretty remarkable.
Good. That was my answer. And here's the one on the cross.
I almost said Sting, but I went for it.
Now, we put gold around our crosses. I love Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ, because there's no gold around those crosses. It's utterly realistic. You're there. It's almost as if you're splattered with the blood. And that is the ugliest thing that you could imagine. The most horrible form of torture, deliberate torture, and deliberate sin, evil, the hate and torture of Almighty God. So that's the ugliest thing that ever happened. It's also the most beautiful thing that ever happened because it's total love, total self-giving, total self-sacrifice, and it's our only hope of salvation. That's how mysterious beauty is. Beauty and ugliness do the same thing. They evoke tears. When we have horrible, hopeless sorrow, we can't not weep. And when we see something so beautiful that we're out of control, we also weep. So somehow or other, those two things join in the human heart. Not that beauty is in itself ugly or ugliness is in itself beautiful, but sometimes the same thing is the most beautiful and the most horrible. It was there. And our sufferings can be our joys. Sister Faustina, in her diary, says an amazing thing. At first, when I read this, I said, that's got to be an exaggeration. She said, if the angels could envy us of anything, they'd envy us two things. One is Holy Communion. The other is the possibility of suffering. Angels can't offer their sufferings to God. They don't suffer. There's a verse in Hebrews, which I never understood until recently. For the joy that was set before him, Jesus endured the cross, making light of its shame. The joy that was set before him. I always interpreted that to mean the resurrection, what was coming next. But set before him, that's in the present. Like a dinner is set before you. How could Jesus have found joy in what he did on the cross? Well, he was infinite love, and he loved us, his poor children, who were doomed without him. And what love enjoys the most is not its own joys, but the joys of its beloved. So what Jesus did on the cross opened the joys of heaven to us, his children. And that was his supreme joy. It was also his supreme suffering. So some of our most extreme sufferings can also be our extreme joys. Because if we're one with his body, we participate in his work. That's very clear in the New Testament. Jesus didn't suffer all the sufferings in his body. He just suffered the primary cause of all the others. We have to join up with him. He gives us each a cross. He promises two things. In this world, you will have tribulation. Number 2, be of good cheer, I have conquered the world. Both of those. Now, we shouldn't go out and look for sufferings. That's masochism. But he will bring sufferings into our lives. And those are opportunities to offer him up those sufferings for the purposes that he has suffered. We can participate in his joyful act of saving souls by offering up our sufferings to him. And that's a mysterious kind of joy. It doesn't take away the pain. It adds something to it. It transforms it.
So we talked about the undoing of the image, the dangerous pain. But now you're introducing a holy pain that is tied ontologically to beauty.
Yes.
Recently, I was reading an author, and he was speaking to us. We're not thinking machines. We're not even believing machines. It's James K. Smith, and he said we are loving machines.
Yes.
We're creatures of love. And I felt led to look to my left in that moment. I was reading in my office, and I have a crucifix in my office. And I saw the crucifixion, and I began to weep profusely. I couldn't stop. Yes. My wife came in.
Yes.
And she smiled and closed the door.
Yes, yes. A very wise wife.
She is. And every time I retell the story, I begin to get emotional, because it's in that moment that I found the purest form of love. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But now in this conversation, I'm being moved even deeper into the cross, because now I'm seeing it as the purest form of beauty. Mm-hmm. How do we follow that? How do I take joy in my suffering as Christ did?
There is no technological answer to that question. There's no spiritual technology. There's no 4 general laws or 12 steps. You push this button and that happens. That's not how love works. You just do it. You just do it. How am I to love? Well, how is an answer to the question how to make something easier. How to make this room lit up in an easier way than a bonfire. Well, electricity. Okay, that's technology. It gives you how answers. There's no spiritual technology. You just do it. There are things that help. Methods are not wrong, but methods are not guaranteed. You follow the scientific method in a laboratory and you'll get the prescribed result. You follow a spiritual method, which may be very good. Practice the virtues, do this. Here's how you make an act of contrition, etc. There's no guarantee what answer you're going to get, except that it'll be God's will. It may be joy. It may be sorrow. They're both God's will. All things work together for good to those who love God. All things. What does all things mean? Well, I think it means all things.
This is amazing. I'm so thankful for you. Now, earlier, you mentioned that we all know we must be heroes. Of course, this is the most heroic thing, and you're telling us to do it. How would you, in love, to do love, how would you describe being a hero? Is it calculable? Like, are there steps for it?
No.
Or is it the same thing?
No. Dom de Caussade's Practice of the Presence of God is good on that. Your daily duties are a sacrament. And you become a hero not by rising above other people and being socially famous. You become a hero in God's eyes by doing his will. And sometimes his will is very simple and easy, and sometimes it's very complex and difficult. And a hero is simply someone who has devoted himself totally and passionately to doing God's will, whatever and whenever. And none of us are perfect at that. We all fall off the horse and have to get up again, which is why we have the sacrament of confession.
Why do you think J.R.R. Tolkien made Sam and Frodo heroes?
Because they were humble. Moses is the greatest Jewish hero and the greatest Jewish prophet. And it says in one of the early books of the Old Testament that the reason Moses pleased God more than anyone else is that he was the humblest man in the world. Humble doesn't mean I think low of myself. It means I don't think of myself, I think of God. I'm a zero, he's in everything. I'm a blank check, he writes the amount. I don't write on my check. That's humility.
How would you tell your 23-year-old self to act in humility?
If I could go back in time and talk to my 23-year-old self, read the Bible once again and take everything literally. The few places that's not true won't do you that much harm. But the many places where that is true will do an immense amount of good. Example.
Yeah, please.
Jesus says, if you had faith as big as a grain of mustard seed, you could take this tree and transplant it into the ocean. And you could move a mountain. You could say to the mountain, move from here to there. Now, if you take that literally, and if you believe that, well, I have at least a mustard seed grain of faith, that's the smallest possible grain, I will be able to move mountains. So I will go and move a mountain. I will change the world. I will do great things. I will be a hero. Nope, sorry, not going to work that way. Well, then what does he mean? Well, he means that you don't have faith as big as a grain of mustard seed. But if you did, you could move mountains. And the more faith you have, the closer you're going to get to that. And in heaven, you will have that kind of faith. So there are no obstacles in heaven, no frustrations in heaven. That's how powerful faith is. Faith means simply letting God in and do the work. And how much work can God do? Everything. So the bigger your faith is, the more work he can do for you, in you, through you. And in this world, we're all, at best, little humble hobbits, semi-mustard seeds. But the difference between, let's say, a 1% mustard seed and a 50% mustard seed is the difference between a schmuck and a hero.
What's the most heroic thing you've seen someone do?
There.
Outside of Jesus. That you know personally.
Oh.
Outside of
My father taking total care of his Parkinson's wife for 20 years. As he saw her lose one faculty after another. In total faithfulness, in total fidelity. and simplicity.
Mm.
And I'm doing that now myself. My wife has Parkinson's too. So it's a kind of a hereditary, not a hereditary disease, but a hereditary lesson.
Did your father influence your faith?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How?
He was simple and strong, and he read the Bible a lot, and he insisted that we read a psalm for dinner every night, and he read before bed, and I saw his prayer book, and his favorite psalms were mine too.
What's your favorite memory with your father?
A slight smile on his face when he was dying, and we were asking him to eat and to stay alive for a little longer, and he reluctantly did that. And then he was lying back, and his eyes were closed, and he was still breathing. And I said, Dad, you can go because you're going under the mercy. And I saw a little smile on his face before he died.
What was the greatest lesson that he ever taught you?
Be honest. Don't try to fake anybody. As a little kid, I was a prankster. I tried to get away with things, and he knew it. And he taught me, I think there was a time when I was playing baseball when I shouldn't, and I broke a window, and he made me fix the window. He paid for it. I didn't have any money to pay for it, but you broke it, you fix it.
I tend to work in very dramatic language because I want to get my point across. And so I will say, this is the best ice cream I've ever had. I have never done this. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. And it's something that I'm trying to get out of because it's not honest.
Well, you know that it's not honest, so you know that you don't mean it literally. It's just an exaggeration.
Right. Is that okay?
It's semi-okay. It's I don't even know if it's a sin. It's probably an unhealthy habit, and it would be better if you didn't exaggerate. But I don't classify sin as an exaggeration as a sin. I do the same thing.
I never do.
It's human. we are mixtures, not just of soul and body, but of flesh and spirit, old man and new man, and that old man is still there, and his habits are still there, and they inevitably are going to take over sometime. And we do stupid things, which is why there's the confessional.
Now, when I mess up, I'm very hard on myself.
Yeah, me too.
And when I read Tolkien, he's very hard on himself.
Yep.
I recently actually read and held the letter that he wrote to Cambridge, where he said, I've wasted 17 years on writing The Lord of the Rings. And he didn't want to speak. He didn't want to go. And I've even read accounts from Christopher when they were on a walk. And his father, Tolkien, was speaking of his irritation with himself. How would you, or how do you overcome that criticism, the inner critic?
Badly. But I remember Brother Lawrence in the Practice of the Presence of God saying to God, each time I fall, I say this prayer. See, this is how I will always act if you do not give me sufficient grace. And then I try again.
Thank you.
Those two things together.
My final question, to wrap everything up, would be, what do you find the best way to experience beauty? What is your favorite way to experience beauty?
Trust that God is going to so flood us with beauty in heaven that for all eternity we will never be bored. And all the things we do for each other now, and all the art and poetry and music that we make for each other now, and all the good deeds that we do for each other now, will be present and perfected and multiplied in heaven in ways that we have no idea of.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. God bless you.
Profound. I'm so grateful for you.